Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron Christensen. Welcome to Horror 101 with Dr. AC, and this is Scare-A-Thon 2023, benefiting the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project. We're about halfway through the month. The link to donate is below in the description, so please make a contribution. And today we're going to be talking about Speak No Evil from 2022, and here to chat with me about that is going to be my awesome panel consisting of Dodd Alley, Vanessa Morgan, and Stephany Perez as we discuss Speak No Evil from 2022 from Denmark.
Wondering why everyone is smiling today after having watched this film.
It's this is not necessarily the sunshiniest of films, but an extremely effective horror film. It is from our director Christian Tafdrup, who is he started off as an actor and has now, well, I don't know if he's given up acting, but he's certainly transitioned into a successful directing career. Vanessa, I want to go ahead and start with you, because where did you see this film for the first time?
I saw it for the first time at the BIF, that is a Brussels International Fantastic Film Festival. And it was one of the only films I watched there that year, because I was working for the BIF market, so I had a lot of work to do. And there was a friend saying, yeah, but you really need to go and see Speak No Evil. I was like, oh, no, I don't think so. I'm really tired. But finally, he convinced me. And yeah, I'm so happy I went to see the film, because it really became one of my favorite films of 2022.
How was it received at the BIF?
Some people absolutely loved it and were saying, like, this is a masterpiece. It's one of the best films I've seen in years. And other people were just too shocked, and they didn't like the bad feeling that the film was giving them. But no one ever said that the film was really bad, but just like, right. They thought it was sometimes a bit too obscene for them and too shocking.
Yeah, too effective, exactly.
Yeah, too effective indeed.
And Dodd, when I floated this as a prospective title for the Scare-A-Thon, you were like, "Yep, this one's worthwhile." Where did you come across it for the first time?
I came across it for the first time on Shudder. Right? In fact, I'm not 100% if this had a theatrical debut in the U.S. or not. If it did, it was a really small one. But I saw it on Shudder for the first time, and I'm with Vanessa. It was one of my favorite films of 2022. I would compare it to a movie like Requiem for a Dream that came out in the early 2000s. It doesn't exactly hit me in the feel-good spot, but it's really hard to watch. But at the same time, I thought it was a very effective horror thriller. So, but yeah, I discovered it on Shudder for the first time, and it was a hidden gem.
Yeah, I haven't heard many people talking about it, but I will certainly be talking about it more. Stephany, I was mentioning backstage that you had watched as part of the Scare-A-Thon, you saw The Sadness, which was pretty rough, and then we swung back the other way for Watcher. Now it seems like we swung back this way again for Speak No Evil. What were your impressions?
It made me really angry. I did not like Vanessa was saying, the bad feeling that I had. And it was, there was a lot going on. But I think it was a good horror film.
Yeah. Well, our basic setup is that we have two couples that meet while on vacation in Tuscany. We have Bjorn and Louise, who are from Denmark. And then we have Patrick and Karin, who are from Holland. And so they meet, they have a friendly enough time kind of vacationing together. And then Patrick and Karin invite Bjorn and Louise and their small daughter to come and visit them in Holland. And so they take them up on it. And it's very much a commentary on ignoring the red flags and kind of just trying to be polite and go along. And also just kind of wondering if, well, they do things differently here, so maybe we can just kind of, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. But sometimes that can take you a little further down the path than you are comfortable with. And I think that's very much what this film is about, is observing people as they try to accommodate other people and their customs and their ways, and feeling those boundaries get pushed and pushed and pushed. As a as a self-defense instructor, this is certainly something that I talk about a lot, about when those red flags come up, and it's like, it's better to set a boundary earlier than later. But I also understand that not everybody has the same tool belt, and there very much feels like both Patrick and Karin are a couple from the Netherlands. They have a stronger sense of will, and you see kind of them just kind of pushing up against Bjorn and Louisa time and time again. And they'll set a boundary, but it's not a very strong boundary, and then they kind of get steamrolled. But yes, to everybody agrees that it is a very effective film, and it reminded me a lot of the film Funny Games from Michael Haneke, where it is kind of all about how we allow the darkness in because we don't recognize it for what it is. We think that maybe the problem's with us and not with the other person. I want to talk first about the score, because similar to Funny Games, the score becomes very much a part of the movie. It becomes a character almost unto itself from the beginning. It reminded me a bit of The Shining, when you have kind of that just kind of beautiful orchestral, but there's something kind of malevolent about it. Anybody else have that same experience?
Yeah, I definitely picked up on it. The second time I watched it, it had been a year since I had seen this, and yeah, I mean, right from the beginning, yeah, I believe it was Patrick and Karin that are showing up at the Italy vacation spot or the holiday spot at the beginning, and right from the get-go, yeah, you have this very intense. It almost kind of made my blood pressure go up, and I'm wondering, this has just started. What do I have to fear? Why is this so intense? So yeah, I definitely picked up on that.
I have to admit that for me, the first time I watched the film, I didn't really pick up on the movie. But then yesterday, I rewatched it again with my boyfriend. And from the beginning, he was saying like, oh, no, I don't like this music. This is going to end badly. I don't like this. So yeah, the music is effective. Yeah.
Yeah, similar to Dodd, there was like a scene, it was just like a regular, like a Catodian like scene. Like I can't remember what they were doing. I think they were just like in the park or something. And the music was so intense. And I was like, wow, like if I put this score over my life, like, is this gonna feel intense? Like that's how effective it was. I was like, okay, yeah, they're trying to tell me something.
Well, there's scenes in The Shining where you'll have, just it panning across the room, and then you'll have this like, kind of burst, which is almost like a jump scare without there any corresponding visual.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't that same thing, but there is just that kind of oppressive choral and orchestral sound to it that just I was really blown away by. There's definitely kind of a war of wills between the male characters and as well as the female characters. And that same struggle is not the same for the male or the female. Like it feels like the female, they are talking about how to raise children. Like it feels like it focuses about that. Whereas between the men, it's about being a quote man and like what masculinity looks like.
Yeah, I felt like the two women, like you're right that they were kind of focusing on that, like raising children, and I felt like Louise, like the more she hung out with Karin, that she kind of wanted to be not like her, whereas Bjorn and Patrick, Bjorn was kind of like, wow, this guy's living the life. I want to be more like him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where that mismatch, that I think that's what really caused the whole downfall of the family, right? Is that Bjorn had this kind of like, yeah, I there's something here I want. I'm a little bit uncomfortable, or my wife's a little bit uncomfortable, but I think that's what really like caused them to stay and past their comfort zone, and you know the rest.
we have spoiler banners at the ready, so we will get into it.
Well, yeah, and especially in the chemistry or the relationship between the men, it was the most prominent after they tried to make their first escape, and really going into this the second time, that really just kind of hit me hard. I'm like, but when they come back, and then Bjorn and Patrick sort of had this bonding moment, ironically at the salt quarry, which factors in as a setting later on, unfortunately. But yeah, it's this primal moment where Bjorn is sort of just letting it all out and really just getting it off his chest. And, I feel so weak in life. And kind of relating to what Stephany was saying, it's almost like when it's coming out that he wants more of this life that Patrick has. And he almost gets kind of too comfortable after they come back after that first time, and they have this sort of bonding ritual.
Yeah, it was very smart from Patrick's point of view, of course, to try and manipulate Bjorn with these tactics.
Yeah. And really, I mean, I think if there's one villain in this film, it's Ninus, the stuffed rabbit.
Yeah.
Because the stuffed rabbit is really the cause of all of this. It all would have been fine if not for that damn rabbit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
let's burn the damn rabbits.
Yeah.
Because the rabbit plays a part in Tuscany where it gets lost and Bjorn has to go back and find it. And when he finds it, he, presents it to his daughter, and he is celebrated by Patrick for his heroism. And I think there is as you said, Dodd, there is that element of hero worship where Bjorn sees in Patrick the things that he would like to be, and having your hero tell you that you're a hero, like that's very much empowering. You want more of that. You get the sense that Bjorn is the one who's missing Patrick when they're home in Denmark. He's like, oh man, I liked how I felt when I was around that person.
Yeah, that's true. But I suppose we shouldn't really talk about the next scene with Ninus, why he's such a bad rabbit.
Oh, let's talk about that right now.
Yeah.
As Dodd alluded to earlier, things are getting uncomfortable, and Louisa and Bjorn decide we should probably go. And they head off. And then they realize, whoops.
We forgot Ninus back at the house with the evil people. And so, yeah, they first they say, no, I'm sorry, little girl, but we have to go on. And yeah, you just see that their daughter is heartbroken because she lost her rabbit. So then Bjorn decides at the last moment, okay, let's go back to get a rabbit. Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting because it's one more moment where a boundary gets pushed up against.
Yeah.
And he yields. He's like, I can't handle this uncomfortable feeling in myself, so I will acquiesce to this other person's feelings. And one of the things we talk about in self-defense is, the idea of valuing somebody else's feelings versus your own safety. And that's kind of where because we're so conditioned to not be rude, to be polite. But yeah, when you watch them turn around, I could just imagine everybody in a theater at Biff just be like, no.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
I think back to that line that Patrick said when he asked, why are you doing this? And he's like, because you let us. And I mean, returning, at that point, again, this is why it made me so mad, because I was like, I would not turn the car around. I'd be like, I'm so sorry, but you're also, I know in 20 minutes, you'll be laughing at whatever you're watching on your iPad and it'll be fine. And we'll get a new minute, but then, and so I thought about that parenting model, right? But then I thought about the extreme that we see then later on when they're yelling at and being so violent towards Abel, right, for not dancing. And I was like, okay, well, we don't have to go there, right? But seeing that spectrum and kind of it takes you as an audience member, it does take you to both sides, and it makes you feel I think that's that uncomfortable feeling of what I'm seeing here I don't agree with, but on the other hand I don't agree with, it's kind of a going back and forth. And I could see maybe in real life, if that were to really happen, how it might be harder.
Yeah.
Well, because they do set, Louisa says, I'm a vegetarian, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then she eats the meat. And it's kind of like, well, and this is how predators work, is we're going to test your boundary.
Mm-hmm.
And if you fall short, then we will push it a little bit further. And I think that's the other thing, is that they feel like I didn't set a strong enough boundary, or I'm at fault, and therefore I can't really make a strong stand. Bjorn and Louisa are making love at one point, and their daughter calls out for them in the middle of the night, and they're like, we want to just be able to have this moment together. And so they continue. And of course, that is used against them later.
In a very creepy way. Yeah. The daughter ends up going into the bed of Patrick and Karin, and they're butt naked. And
Yeah.
which to me, I mean, fine. I mean, I have two kids, and so yeah, if I found them in that situation, that's just a moment that got under my skin. Was finding the child like that.
But we also, I mean, we recognize that Patrick and Karin are earthier, more sexual, like they're more openly demonstrative on the dance floor. So again, it's that sense of, well, they do things differently here. It's not, it's that whole thing. It's not bad. It's just different. It's kind of like, but if it's uncomfortable enough for you, that it's not okay for you. Again, your boundaries are your boundaries. And I wondered, Vanessa, that's why I was asking how it was received at BIFF, because I wondered because sometimes we find ourselves not liking characters because of the choices they make in a movie.
Yeah.
And I wondered if maybe that's why people were upset. They're like, those people didn't stand up for themselves, and therefore they, quote, got what they deserved.
Exactly. Because the thing of being polite like this, I think it's something that is much more done in the US, from my experience, and not that much in Europe. So a lot of people were commenting, saying like, yeah, no one would ever react like this. But I don't agree, because if I see like the way I grew up, my parents really taught me to never disagree with someone, to never react, to never express my feelings. And for decades, I was actually doing that without thinking. I'm so glad I'm now at the other side. So,
right.
But when I was watching the film for the first time, I was really thinking like, if this would have happened to me 20 years ago, I would probably haven't reacted at all and just felt weak and not do anything. So It really depends on where you grew up, how you grew up, what happened to you.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, I feel like that it's even more understandable when they don't react or don't push back to like those little boundary, like pushing things like yelling at your kid or whatever, sleeping naked with your kid, like walking into the bathroom while you're taking a shower. I get that. But when they were in the car after their daughter had gotten her tongue cut off and taken away, like after that, I was like, is he holding a gun? Because if I don't see a gun, I'm running, I'm punching, I'm kicking. Like, I don't I was like, there's no way.
Because I felt like they were actually so weak and that they didn't believe in themselves at all, that this is why they didn't react, because they knew from the start that they weren't going to survive. And what I think is interesting about a movie like this, here we're talking about extremes of good and bad and not reacting, being weak, etc. But I think a lot of these things play out in real life as well, but just on a smaller level, like people not doing what they really want to do because they don't believe in themselves, stuff like that. These are just extremes, but I think it's actually extremely realistic.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, my wife, who's also a self-defense instructor, she just came in for the last bit, and she's like, why aren't they doing anything? And I'm like, if you'd seen the first part of the movie, it would make a little bit more sense. But I think that, again, we very much bring ourselves to this movie, and we'll either relate or we won't relate. But I think that's a big part of it. Because I absolutely believed at that point that they wouldn't fight back. They were defeated, and on some level, I feel like they felt like they deserved it because they hadn't stood up soon enough. And they're like, what, we're going to fight back now? It's like, and that's why the final humiliation of them, being told to strip and walk down and basically just go to their deaths. But they go willingly like sheep. And you get the sense of like, yes, there are sheep in the world and there are wolves in the world. And, what can you do about that?
Yeah. I mean, that scene just hurt. I mean, when they were in the car, and the thing I found the most impactful about that, it was that the mother holds her daughter and says, I will let no one hurt you. And then immediately after the tongue incident occurred. And I think there were scenes throughout the movie where the mother said something along those lines to her daughter, like, when you're with me, you're safe, and things of that sort. And so yeah, at the end, I couldn't tell if they, kind of like what you were saying, Aaron, maybe they just surrendered to defeat, if they were in shock. But more than I did the first time I saw it, I didn't feel as much as sorry for them as I did the first time, because I'm going, fight, please, just for 2 seconds, grow a backbone and save your kid.
Yeah, for sure.
I did have a question about motive, because I know that when he asked, "Oh, why are you doing this?" I at first, before like I knew what was going on earlier in the movie when things were starting to get sinister, I was like, "Is this like another Hills Have Eyes? Like, are they eating people? Are they providing like meat to the town? Like, I was like that restaurant that they went to. Like, are they gonna throw those? Like, is that like I was just trying to figure out why are you doing this? And then when he just said like just cause you let me, and then they show you how they keep doing it.
Yeah, it's just symbolic, I think.
That had never crossed my mind. I mean, in terms of if they were doing that, I did have a lot of questions in my head about, okay, so Patrick's not working. He's obviously not a doctor. How are they bankrolling this? Are they just taking the wallet from the same family?
Right.
Well, that's kind of where I started getting into this, the cliche horror questions. Like, did none of these families that are in the photos tell anybody the address they were going to? Or was that part of just the commentary because they were so trusting that they just never told their relatives and friends the GPS address?
Yeah, that was also one of the things that I was thinking, like, yeah, one of the minor points of the film that they could have explained a little bit more. That this is where, yeah, I started asking too many questions like, okay, but they told their friends they were going to see the couple, and doesn't anyone know about this? And what about all the other couples? And they must have known something.
Well, okay, so maybe, but
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not somebody who like, oh, we're going to visit, I'm going to visit you, Vanessa in Brussels, and here's the address. It's like, no, I just tell people I'm going to visit my friend Vanessa in Brussels. I don't necessarily give people the address of where I'm going.
No, not the address, but just the fact, like, if the police would start looking, you could say, like, okay, I know they were go and see a couple.
Right.
They were in Tuscany, in Italy at that moment. And now they live in the south of Holland.
Yep.
Yeah, there's enough information to send the police over.
And I wondered about Mujahid's role too. Like,
Yeah.
what did he get out of it?
We haven't talked about him
You
yet.
don't have money, so.
Yeah, I have no idea who he is. Yeah.
That was another scene that kind of got under my skin, is when he just showed up to babysit the kids. And you could see the look of concern in Louise's face. But once again, just as the film goes, they just kind of go with the flow. But that really was a moment where I would have drawn my line in the sand and said, no, I don't know who this guy is.
Right. With regard to, we know he's not working. Well, what we don't know about Patrick could fill like the Superdome, because he clearly lies. He says he's a doctor, but he's not a doctor. I mean, who knows what he's actually saying or where the money comes from? It is one of those things where it's an incomplete narrative, convenient for them. Kind of going to your question, Stephany, this idea of why they do what they do for people who live kind of like as hedonistically as they do. I mean, I'm sure, Dodd, I know you're a parent. Like, I know, like there's always that temptation to just like, I want to just strangle you, kid. It's like, and in this case, they actually get to. They're like, oh yeah, I'm just going to start over, start fresh. Maybe we'll get the right kid this time, the one that'll do everything, that does the way we want them to, because that's the level at which they're operating. They're operating from a very kind of entitled position because their kids are disposable.
It's like the sadness, but without the virus.
Yeah, right. I mean, they are able to do whatever they want and continue just experimenting until they perhaps come across that right combination of the kid who's able to do everything the way they want them to, that's out of the way when they want them to be out of the way, and it's kind of like, it's a weird mindset to be entering, but I was kind of like, that's where my mind was going, where they just keep swapping them out and swapping them out and swapping them out. And you think about people who like go through that, like in relationships. It's like, well, I'm going to, this relationship isn't working for me, so I'm going to dump you. And then we'll try this one and dump you. And it's like, maybe the problem is you, not with the partner.
I noticed too, they were targeting single child families in order to make this work. And I guess that's the only way they could make it work.
Right. That's true.
Yeah.
there was a through line about singing. There was a scene in the beginning where Bjorn was crying at the concert, and then later Patrick was like, I love singing, and he's just like in the car like singing. He's like, this is what I think angels sound like. And I wonder about that. I mean, as someone who loves to sing, it is something that comes like, it's like very cathartic. It's something that comes like very I get from the, you know, from the back of the head brain kind of like feeling of pleasure and all the things. So I wonder if that's like another like, I don't know, symbol.
Yeah. Well, what I thought was also really interesting about that song from the beginning with the concert is that was one of the moments where Bjorn was really happy, was very sensitive, but then the song comes back at the end when everything really goes downhill. And I thought that was like so heartbreaking, that the moments of happiness and everything from the beginning, that this is his downfall near the end with the same music. And I don't know, it really worked for me.
Yeah. Well, and then you have, you know, you have the music in the center where Patrick is listening to the music really, really loudly. And, you know, just that celebration of life. But it's, you know, we've all been around people whose enjoyment of the moment supersedes anyone around them. You know, it's like it's more important for them to be enjoying themselves than it is for anybody else to be enjoying themselves. And it, you know, again, it kind of calls a lot of, I think, as you said, Vanessa, the idea that it's kind of turns up the volume on a lot of these like kind of microaggressions that we see in our lives all the time.
Yeah. And I think it's also about finding the middle ground somewhere, because if you have too many boundaries, you will just be like, a very egotistic person and make everyone around you unhappy. So that's not the way to go either.
Right.
So, yeah. I think it's interesting thing because it's really the kind of film where you want to talk about the subject for hours after watching the film.
Yeah,
and it's not so easy. It seems very black and white, but it's actually not at all.
And at the same time, you're kind of like, well, are we victim blaming or not? You know, because really, who's responsible for this? It's Patrick and Karin. At the bottom line, it's Patrick and Karin. And it's like, well, they should have done this or they should have done that. And it's like, or they should not have been attacked in the first place, you know?
Yeah, I agree. We shouldn't be victim blaming in this case. Like we may not understand Bjorn and Louise and how they react and why they're weak-willed, but they do have their reasons, I think. And yeah, of course, the real cause is Patrick and Karin. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, they're a very nice couple, you know, and that proves to be their downfalls, that they're too nice.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, but there was a lack of transparency in their own relationship. And I thought that that's something that could have helped them along the way. One example I saw was that when Louise was in the shower and Patrick went in and was brushing his teeth, she just kind of went to bed and back with Bjorn and didn't say anything. And I noticed a lot of instances of that where they wouldn't tell one another, hey, this just happened. This is why I'm getting creeped out. Whereas if maybe they did that, they would have had more, like something more concretely telling them why.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I wondered that too. I wondered if Bjorn had told Louise that he saw Abel drowned, would she have willingly gone with Patrick in the car and then, you know, had that? Because again, they didn't have a gun. I mean, they had the little scissors, but like still, like there wasn't, you know, and it's 2 against 2, I guess. But like, yeah, that's it.
Well, and I mean, kind of to that point, there's a moment where Bjorn does try and fight back, and he is immediately overpowered. And you just go, yeah, you're not equipped. You're not equipped in so many ways, you know, for this. And I felt bad for him in that regard. I was like, it's too bad. It's too bad that you don't have more tools available to you, you know, but here we are.
Yeah, he should have known you.
Well, it doesn't make you bulletproof, but it does give you more options.
Yeah, I should have met you on holiday. You and Michelle. That would have been a great vacation afterwards.
Well, hey, that's a great note to wrap things up on. Again, we're doing Scare-A-Thon 2023, and it is benefiting the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project. The link to donate is below in the description. Please make a contribution. It's a cause that's very important to myself and my guests. I'm looking forward to more of October looking ahead. And until next time, keep searching, keep exploring, and keep sharing the scare.